The National Desk, America's News Now.
This week on the National Desk, dangerous duo.
In President Xi, President Putin sees a potential backer here. This is a man who doesn't have a whole lot of friends on the international stage.
Russia and China tighten relations with an agreement in Moscow. Lawmakers now taking renewed steps aimed at weakening future threats. Plus, high-stakes hike.
Reducing inflation is likely to require a period of below-trend growth and some softening in labor market conditions.
This week, the outlook on future rate hikes, leaving investors on edge. Then, the latest crisis in the classroom, the push for a parent's Bill of Rights. Why some say the president is getting in the way of their kids' education. And later, the fact-check team digs into Biden's billionaire tax. New details on how the president's proposal could impact charitable giving.
From the nation's capital, this is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Dee Dee Gatton, and on this weekend edition, we take a look at the big headlines of the week and look ahead at what to expect, starting with the 4 big stories we've been following all week. First, former President Donald Trump in legal limbo. The 2 probes now crossing paths to set the future of the former president. Debt disagreement. Lawmakers struggling to compromise on the nation's budget, time running out to avoid default. Plus, pension pushback, the fight over raising the retirement age in France, how a similar change could impact U.S. Social Security. But we start with trouble for TikTok, the social media under fire this week on Capitol Hill.
It's not that complex. Yes or no, do they have access to user data?
I will remind you that making false or misleading statements to Congress is a federal crime.
Tense testimony on Capitol Hill, the CEO of TikTok facing lawmakers from both sides of the aisle about the social media app. From national security threats to data privacy, the spread of misinformation and the safety of minors. It was a heated hearing at times. The National Desk, Kayla Gaskins has the story.
TikTok's global CEO, Shou Chow, fighting for the app's future in America.
There are more than 150 million Americans who love our platform.
Republicans and Democrats highly concerned about the app's links to Chinese parent company ByteDance.
I'm one that doesn't believe that there is really a private sector in China.
And what that means for the access and data the Chinese government has on American users.
That is 150 million Americans that CCP can collect sensitive information on and control what we ultimately see, hear, and believe.
A Wall Street Journal report published Thursday says the Chinese government firmly opposes the Biden administration's demand for ByteDance to sell TikTok. China claiming a sale involves exporting technology and thus has to be approved by the government.
Despite your assertions to the contrary, China certainly thinks it is in control of TikTok.
More alarm bells ringing over the app's content. Congresswoman Kat Cammack drawing attention to a violent video targeting the committee.
This video has been up for 41 days. It is a direct threat to the chairwoman of this committee.
That video taken down shortly after Cammack's comments. And parents also concerned about the power TikTok has over their kids.
TikTok bombards our children with pornography, radical transgender ideology.
The CEO making a direct appeal to American users ahead of the hearing.
Some politicians have started talking about banning TikTok. Now, this could take TikTok away from all 150 million of you.
But his testimony not appearing to assuage fears.
I have seen no evidence that the Chinese government has access to that data. They have never asked us. We have not provided.
Well, you know what? I find that actually preposterous.
TikTok failing to reverse Washington's skepticism at a moment when lawmakers are mulling their next steps. I'm Kayla Gaskins for the National Desk, America's News Now.
New details on the U.S. drone hit by a Russia jet. The military no longer searching for the aircraft, according to the Washington Examiner. The report cites an Air Force spokesperson who says it sank to an unrecoverable depth in the Black Sea. It goes on to say all sensitive data was wiped from the aircraft prior to the crash to prevent anyone from obtaining any intelligence. This week, President Biden's approval rating dipped close to its lowest point in a new Associated Press poll. President Biden sits at 38%. Putting that into context, back in February, that number was 45%. Biden's approval rating hit the lowest point of his presidency back in July of 2022. And anticipation continues to build on when former President Trump could be indicted for allegedly paying hush money to cover up an affair. A New York grand jury reportedly did not discuss the case when it met, possibly pushing the matter to Monday. Sinclair's chief political correspondent Scott Thuman has the latest on the impact.
All eyes focused on Alvin Bragg, Manhattan's district attorney, coming and going quietly and leaving many to guess if a grand jury is about to indict a former president for the first time ever.
It'd be a sad day in America that a former president of the United States would be indicted. I put my trust in the judicial system, as I believe the majority of Americans will.
But Trump supporters and conservatives seeing it very differently.
I think the DA should focus more on prioritizing safety for New Yorkers than settling political scores. I think it's very clear that he campaigned on doing this to the former president.
I think it's a publicity stunt by the DA in Manhattan, personally. I think it's just to bring more limelight to him.
That part of the reason Republicans are demanding Bragg testify before Congress about his motivation and provide communications he's had regarding the case. But Bragg now pushing back. His office saying congressional Republicans are just reacting to Trump's headline-grabbing statement last weekend, creating a false expectation that he would be arrested the next day. And Congress is not the appropriate branch to review pending criminal matters.
Well, it's the world we live in, Scott. It's a very political world. I'm sad for the legal profession that I'm a part of. I think these cases are going to make or break the legal system. Can they withstand the stress? It's like a stress test now on the legal system, all of these Trump investigations.
Or how they'll affect the 2024 race. Trump heading to friendly territory in Waco, Texas this weekend to rally his base and undoubtedly rail against the investigations, to also include his taking of top-secret documents and alleged election interference. In Washington, Scott Thuman for the National Desk.
A look over Capitol Hill now, where the stalemate over the debt limit drags on. A handful of House and Senate Republicans repeatedly demanding President Biden sit down and negotiate spending cuts.
We have a solution here, and the solution is to stop the craziness of the Biden administration and get back to normalcy by shrinking Washington and growing America.
The House Freedom Caucus wants to restrict discretionary funding for the next fiscal year at the 2022 threshold and keep defense spending at current levels. They say this would balance the federal budget in 10 years. The White House and Democrats argue that math doesn't add up, accusing the GOP of holding the economy hostage.
The right answer is for Republicans in the House to stop saber-rattling, drop the hostage-taking and brinksmanship, and work together, in a bipartisan way, to extend the debt ceiling without strings attached.
According to Fox News, the Treasury Department now says it may not know the default deadline until after tax filing season. Earlier this year, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said the country could have until June. This week in France, demonstrators filled the streets to protest President Emmanuel Macron's retirement age increase. Macron saying he made the move to help protect the pension system. Earlier this week, the fact-check team investigated how a similar decision could impact the U.S. Social Security system. France's president facing protests and attempts to remove him from office because he raised France's retirement age from 62 to 64. I am back with the fact-check team. And Courtney, we know that there have been calls to do something similar right here in the U.S.
There have, because we have concerns about some of our own social benefits, like Social Security, which is expected to run out of money by 2032.
And lawmakers on both sides of the aisle, they have said they do not want to cut Social Security. But Courtney, you also found that there have been calls to raise our retirement age to start receiving those benefits.
That's right. Some Republicans, like Senator John Kennedy, Congresswoman Nancy Mace, and presidential candidate Nikki Haley, have suggested raising the retirement age for the people currently in their 20s. There's also a bipartisan coalition coalition led by Senators Angus Kind and Bill Cassidy that's reportedly considering gradually changing the full retirement age to 70. But unlike France or those other European countries you mentioned earlier, the U.S. hasn't passed a law to raise the age.
For many looking ahead, a big question here is at what age can you claim full benefits? And I know, Connor, you got the breakdown on that.
That's right, Dee Dee. I do. So it depends on when you were born because it's been gradually raising. But here's a basic breakdown. So most Americans can start receiving Social Security if they retire at the age of 62. But if they do that, then they lose 30% of their regular Social Security check. So the full retirement age, which is when you get your full benefits, is 66 years old for anyone born after 1943, and it's 67 for anyone born after 1960.
On average, when do most Americans retire?
So according to a Gallup poll, the average age is now 61, which is up from 59 in 2002. But that same poll found that people who haven't retired yet say they don't expect to until they're 66.
Wide impact and a really interesting topic. The Fact Check team, you can read this story as well as some of their other stories and more information, links to where they found their information on our website, thenationaldesk.com. Ahead here on the National Desk, panic button push, the new initiative in Texas schools designed to improve student safety. Plus, family finances, the father-daughter duo teaming up to teach all ages how to manage money. The National Desk team of reporters is bringing you the headlines from coast to coast. We're taking the pulse of America, starting in Texas, where school safety is on the minds of many.
After the tragedy in Uvalde, the Texas Education Agency, or TEA, may overhaul school safety standards for the entire state, requiring panic buttons, exterior numbering on school buildings, and lock boxes to hold master keys for police.
Being a small rural district, we felt like we needed a quick way to get assistance when needed. You know, we were looking for quick response time.
Panic buttons already rolled out in Brackett ISD, located about 2 hours west of San Antonio. They're placed in the hallways and under office desks.
I think if there's funding to support it, then that's definitely something that all districts should consider. But again, I do know that it is something that's very costly.
Brackett bought its alarms through a grant, something the TEA is hoping all districts can do. The agency has already rolled out funding for physical panic buttons, which can be costly, as well as more affordable apps that use a virtual button.
The demand is high in Texas for this technology.
Todd Miller from the company Rave Mobile Safety says the grants provide 2 years of service.
And then we'll work with legislators and other key stakeholders to make sure that there's ongoing funding.
If the proposal passes public comment, it could go into effect by next year. But Diaz says there's already a long wait to get panic devices.
Right now, it seems like everyone is struggling to get them because of supply and demand.
That rapid communication, that engagement with 911 is really critical. And so this is putting a safety tool into the hands of all the faculty and staff members.
Now to California, a Fresno family's house is damaged after a car drove through their home Saturday night. A yellow Camaro plowed in while one member of the family was playing video games in the living room.
I was like between my chair and the couch, and I heard like this big boom, and I turned around, and the next thing I knew, there was like dust everywhere.
Terrifying, and he says the people in the car jumped out, helped get his leg free, then took off running down the street. In South Carolina, a father-daughter duo is working to teach kids and parents about financial literacy. It all started after Anthony Dodson decided to show his daughter, Kaden, valuable life skills in a fun way.
He literally just taught me about credit, and then we started making books, and then we wrote them together.
Great idea. The pair publishing their first book about credit scores 3 years ago. Now they're going on tour across the country to teach even more families about finance and starting a business together. Just ahead, the Marine veteran telling his story about the withdrawal from Afghanistan, plus the people he saved on his way out. And later, crisis in the classroom, the parents pushing for educational control. This month, the House Foreign Affairs Committee started its hearings on the Biden administration's handling of the Afghanistan withdrawal. Marine veteran and founder of Mighty Oaks Foundation, Chad Robichaux, sat down with the National Desk Jan Jeffcoat this week to discuss the operation.
13 U.S. service members died during that withdrawal. Chad, House leaders say this was a stunning failure of leadership. What did you make of the first hearing, and who would you like to see held responsible for this?
Well, I mean, the first hearing is just a tip of the iceberg, was shedding light on what happened in Afghanistan during their withdrawal. I think when you ask who needs to be held accountable, it's all the way to the top. The President of the United States is responsible for this. Ultimately, he made the decision. By the way, he made the decision to withdraw from Afghanistan against the advice of his generals, the Joint Chiefs, against the advice of all the leaders of our intelligence committees. He alone made this decision. And then he imported the NEO operation, which is a non-combatant evacuation operation, onto the State Department, which was led by Secretary Blinken. And so those two people, in my opinion, are the two people that need to be most held accountable for this decision. And by the way, you know, for me, we hear the word botched a lot and debacle. These were not, this was not a mistake. No one fumbled the ball. These were very intentional and deliberate decisions that were made, knowing the consequences. Our military advisors and intelligence advisors predicted these consequences, and here we are. And the President of the United States is directly responsible as the Commander-in-Chief, and so is Secretary Blinken to the decisions that were made.
In your new book, Saving Aziz, you tell the story of saving your friend and interpreter Aziz and his family during that withdrawal before the Taliban forces took over the country. Tell us about the book and how you rescued Aziz.
Well, Saving Aziz is a story of a modern-day miracle. I served with Aziz on 8 deployments in special operations. He was my sole interpreter and really my sole teammate because of the nature of my job. I worked alone, and he saved my life multiple times. I became close to him, his wife, and his 6 kids. And I knew I couldn't sit back on my couch and watch my friend be killed because of this withdrawal. So I made a decision to put a small team together to go get Aziz, his wife, and kids. And this small team of about 12 special operations veterans who courageously stood up to help me. We basically felt this burden in our heart to do more. And not only did we get to save Aziz and his family, but God orchestrated the ability for us to rescue 17,000 others. And so Saving Aziz is a book of that story and a chronological series of events that outline the decisions the White House made, the State Department made, and the aftermath that was left behind for that, including the death of 13 of our service members, leaving thousands of Americans behind, tens of thousands of our allies and interpreters behind, and leaving 40 million Afghans, to include 20 million women and little girls that will be sexually enslaved the rest of their life.
And what is life like right now for the people that were left behind in Afghanistan, right now under Taliban rule?
Yeah, well, there's 2 things that they're dealing with in Afghanistan. One is they're dealing with the Taliban being in charge of their country, and they're not a governing organization. They don't know how to govern a country. So people are starving. There's poverty. People are freezing coming out of the winter. So there's that side of it, of just economic failure because they can't lead a country. Secondly, there's the fact that they are terrorists. The Doha Agreement says they should not allow terrorism in the country, but the Doha Agreement with the White House doesn't even indicate that the Taliban are, in fact, terrorists. as they were even taking over Afghanistan, we saw them start to kill our allies and capture our allies and anybody that would have been sympathetic to America or West. Women have no human rights. I won't even say health care, but they have no human rights. They can't leave their homes. They're forced back in burqas, like you see in the pictures here. They're being, as young as 9 years old, being sold into sexual enslavement to 50-year-old Taliban fighters. And they're not even allowed to have health care. A woman is not allowed to see a male doctor, and a woman is not allowed to be a doctor. So there's no health care in Afghanistan for women at all. And there's 20 million women and little girls there. And, you know, my question to the world is, why are we not speaking up for this human rights atrocity to women? Someone needs to speak up for these women in Afghanistan.
Yeah,
and I'm thankful for outlets like this that allow it to be talked about.
Yeah, devastating impacts there. Marine veteran and founder of Mighty Oaks Foundation and author of Saving Aziz, Chad Robichaux, thanks for joining us this morning and for your service to our country. We appreciate it. God bless.
Thank you.
Still ahead here, the stories making headlines next week. From the rare planetary event not happening for another 40 years to the final games of March Madness. You're watching the National Desk, America's News Now. Taking a look at the top trending stories on our website right now, a lucky man in Virginia won the lottery twice in the same drawing. He purchased 10 tickets, 2 of which match 4 of the winning numbers plus the Powerball. And a pickup truck ended up upside down in the Chick-fil-A drive-thru Monday when it was hit by a flying car. Look at that. The driver hit a stop sign, causing them to catapult into the air. Those stories and much more available right now at thenationaldesk.com. Looking ahead to stories making headlines this week, on Tuesday, 5 planets are set to meet up in the sky in a rare planetary alignment. Astronomers say they'll likely appear in an arc, best visible just after sunset. Also next week, the Final Four teams in college basketball will square off Saturday to compete in the March Madness final happening next Monday night. Denver students took action on Thursday, one day after 2 faculty members at East High School were shot and injured by a student. They went to the Colorado State Capitol to call for gun reform. Hours earlier, the accused gunman was found dead. Austin Lyle's body was discovered in the woods not far from his car, about 50 miles southwest of the city. The 17-year-old was subject to a daily search because of behavioral issues. Denver schools putting armed officers into the city's public high schools in response. Parents descending on Capitol Hill Thursday, blasting the actions of the Biden administration and claiming the government is interfering with their fundamental rights to raise their children. Janae Bowens listened to what they had to say and joins us now with more on their concerns.
These parents say they are being shut out of their children's education and are being tagged as threats by the federal government. Outraged parents on Capitol Hill Thursday.
It is tragic that they now fear the federal government. We are not domestic terrorists, and we will not be silenced.
The frustration stems back to that 2021 Justice Department memo that directed federal law enforcement to work with local authorities because of a, quote, disturbing spike in harassment, intimidation, and threats of violence against school staff and board members. Parent advocacy groups say parents were pegged as threats after voicing concerns about COVID-19 lockdowns, gender identity policies, and controversial subjects in the curriculum.
What they are doing is teaching through the lens of critical race theory and critical theory in general. And it's demoralizing our children, and it's having an effect that's causing division amongst the children, and we're seeing increases of violence across the country.
Attorney General Merrick Garland released the memo after the National School Boards Association sent a letter to President Biden comparing some conduct at school board meetings to domestic terrorism. The organization has apologized for the letter. They also say they regret sending it in the first place.
This appeared to be a manufactured crisis. It was all put together for politics.
The hearing comes on the heels of a House Judiciary report that found no legitimate basis for the memo. Despite calls to do so, Garland hasn't rescinded the memo.
And it unquestionably chilled parents in exercising their rights.
Democrats pushed back during the hearing, accusing the right of First Amendment violations when it comes to violent threats against school board members and book bans.
Near my district in southeastern PA, school board members received threats of evoking gas chambers and acts of physical violence.
And they invariably focus on books by Black and LGBTQ authors and on the teaching of American history that includes an honest examination of race and bigotry.
We're seeing more parents push back against school board members and other elected officials in the form of recall elections. According to Ballotpedia, there were 29 recall efforts in 2020. The following year saw 92. Reporting for the National Desk, I'm Janae Bowens.
Ahead in our next half hour, China threats how the country's new agreement with Russia could impact competition with the U.S. Plus, losing faith, new numbers on how Americans are feeling about the U.S. economy and banking system. You're watching the National Desk, America's News Now. You can catch us live weekdays from 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. and 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern Time, and anytime online at thenationaldesk.com. We'll be right back.
The National Desk, America's News Now.
Our banking system is sound. This is different than 2008.
Uneasy economy. Wall Street in recovery after big bank trouble. The Fed's inflation fight in the spotlight. Then, the union shutting down schools in the nation's second largest district, what workers in Los Angeles are now demanding. Plus, recall delay dangers, the flaw in the law that limits when product warnings can be released. From the nation's capital, this is the National Desk, America's News Now. Great to have you with us. I'm Dee Gatton. And developing right now, mounting concerns over China and the country's growing power. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says the record defense budget is necessary to compete. The National Desk, Christine Frizzell reports from Capitol Hill.
The week began with a red carpet reception, a celebration between what Chinese President Xi Jinping called good neighbors and reliable partners. But to much of the rest of the world, it was a snapshot of an emboldened opposition. China's apparent endorsement of Russia's war in Ukraine, just one of many reasons U.S. leaders see China as its biggest threat, as laid out in a hearing on Capitol Hill.
When it comes to China, this is a generational challenge for us.
China spending more and more on its military, preparing for what many believe is an imminent goal, the invasion of Taiwan, where most of the world's semiconductor chips are made.
Imagine if China invaded Taiwan tomorrow and controlled 90% of the global supply. We would be in a world of hurt.
Some calling on an immediate shift in U.S. policy to prepare, like former EU Ambassador Gordon Sondland.
The first thing we should be doing is we should be bringing home everything we can possibly do at home, which is almost everything. The price difference of doing it at home and doing it in China has to be what I would call the freedom premium.
Some states already taking action, with growing concerns China has been encroaching on our agriculture. A new law in South Dakota prevents its government from contracting with foreign governments seen as enemies of the United States, including Iran, North Korea, Venezuela, Cuba, Russia, and of course, China.
I've seen how China has come in and bought up our manufacturing facilities, our processing facilities. They've also, over the years, bought our fertilizer, our chemical companies. Their goal is to control our food supply so they can control the United States of America.
One other national security concern, lawmakers say China has continued to block access to a lab in Wuhan, where many believe the COVID-19 pandemic may have started. I'm Christine Frizzell reporting for the National Desk, America's News Now.
And this week, over 500,000 students in Los Angeles were out of school after last-minute negotiations between the school's staff union and the district failed. The union members, which include positions like cafeteria workers, custodians, and bus drivers, are demanding equitable wage increases, more full-time work, respectful treatment, and increased staffing levels for improved student services. The district superintendent, Alberto Carvalho, acknowledging that many school employees can't afford to live where they work under their current salaries.
If we go to the table, we'll be able to meet in the middle and come up with a historic contract for this very deserving workforce group, in addition to returning our kids to the protective, safety, and routine that schools offer.
Class did resume on Friday, but the union and school district have yet to agree on a contract for the workers. Now to your money. Despite recent bank failures and turmoil, the Federal Reserve raised interest rates by 25 basis points this week to continue fighting inflation. That brings interest rates to their highest level since 2007. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell also gave an outlook on future rate hikes, indicating they could be ending soon.
We believe, however, that events in the banking system over the past 2 weeks are likely to result in tighter credit conditions for households and businesses, which would in turn affect economic outcomes. It is too soon to determine the extent of these effects, and therefore too soon to tell how monetary policy should respond.
Just 2 weeks ago, the FDIC bailed out depositors at collapsed Silicon Valley and Signature banks. The federal government says banks are safe, but a new survey shows Americans are losing faith in banks. According to a poll by the Associated Press, right now just 10% of U.S. adults say they have high confidence in American financial institutions. That's down from 22% back in 2020. On top of that, nearly 3/4 of Americans rate the current U.S. economy as poor. Earlier this week, the National Desk Jan Jeffcoat went one-on-one with the Director of General Economics at the Cato Institute, Scott Lincecum, to talk the latest financial headlines.
Yes, sir. The Fed's raised it 1/4 percentage point, just as many economists predicted. Will this do the trick, Scott? And what effect will this have on the markets?
Well, the Fed's job with the bank situation, it was already tough. It just got tougher because the banks are going to be tightening credit conditions already, but the Fed is still worried about inflation. The latest inflation numbers we had last week were still pretty high. So, investors are going to be struggling with the same type of uncertainty that the Fed is struggling with, trying to balance that inflation fighting with not causing the economy to really seize up and tip us into a deep recession.
Are we finally seeing banks stabilize, do you think? How do you feel about the banking system?
Well, banks are riskier than I think a lot of people understand. And Silicon Valley Bank was unfortunately even riskier. Overall, the bank situation seems to be stabilizing a bit, in part because of some pretty major actions by both the Fed and the Treasury Department, effectively guaranteeing that folks will be made whole. But the bigger question, I think, is really what the long-term situation is with these banks. If the government keeps taking care of everything, that creates moral hazard and might build even bigger risks into the system in the long term because it's encouraging banks to act even riskier.
Right, and even with these interest rate hikes, I want to go back to that very quickly. We did see sales of previously owned homes rise 14.5% in February from January, obviously still down from the year before. What's the future of the housing market? Where do you see home prices go from here?
Well, I think prices were kind of doing their thing with the increased sales because home prices actually declined a little bit nationwide for the first time in 11 years. So that probably pushed some buyers back into the market when they saw that those crazy price hikes of the past had paused a bit. So even with higher interest rates, maybe we're getting a little more activity, although the market's really still very sluggish. And with rates increasing long term, it probably is going to stay that way. And then over the even longer term, the fact is we still have a pretty big supply problem. We're just not building enough housing, especially with a large generation of millennials getting into that peak home buying age. So over the long term, we're probably going to see prices still going up until we get out there and build.
Yeah, there's that you just mentioned it, the housing shortage right there. That's such a good point.
And you can view the full interview plus more top stories online all the time at thenationaldesk.com. A tweet from President Biden coming under fire this week after saying the average billionaire pays 3% in taxes. Earlier this week, the fact-check team looked into the claim and breaks down how the president's proposed billionaire tax could impact charitable giving. The billionaire tax in President Biden's 2024 budget proposal would impose an annual 25% tax on Americans with a net worth of over $100 million. This tax not being imposed, but we wanted to know how this could impact charitable giving. And for all the answers, I'm with the fact-check team. Courtney, starting with you, how many people actually have that net worth?
Reports vary on that, but there aren't many that do. The White House says it only impacts 0.01% of the wealthiest Americans, but we also found another report from investment firm Henley & Partners that found roughly 9,700 Americans that would fall into that category.
When it comes to giving to charity, who gives the most?
So according to DonorBox, the wealthiest Americans give the most, but this is interesting. People making less than $50,000 a year are the second highest givers, while people making between $100,000 and $500,000 a year are the lowest in terms of their income percentage.
Well, we know that GOP leaders have already criticized the budget. And Connor, we know you've been looking into both sides. What is the potential impact of this proposal on charitable giving?
Well, Dee Dee, it's hard to say because on one hand, you could say, yeah, it's going to have a bad impact because it may discourage the wealthy to give money if they face higher taxes. And a poll from a ways back in 2012 does back that up. It shows that 56% of billionaires say taxes do impact their charitable giving. But on the other hand, there's some experts saying it could actually increase donations.
And looking into the reasoning behind all of this, what are experts saying about why that would happen?
According to Patrick Rooney, who's a professor of economics and philanthropic studies at Indiana University, people might want to increase their charitable giving so that they can stay under that $100 million wealth threshold.
All right, well, interesting topic. We know that you will continue to dig deeper, and the fact-check team will continue to follow developments on this story, as well as other issues that matter to you. You can also read this story with links to where they found their information on our website, thenationaldesk.com. Still ahead here, park problems, the new efforts to keep dangerous drugs off playgrounds. Plus, concerning connection, why teachers in one Midwest state are worried the Silicon Valley Bank could put their retirement at risk. This is the National Desk, America's News Now. Our team of nearly 4,000 local journalists bringing you the headlines from coast to coast. From Ohio teachers who could be impacted by a bank collapse to free money for California shoppers. We're taking the pulse of America, starting with a push to ban illegal drugs in Washington public parks.
Like many communities, Lakewood takes pride in its parks.
I like to come to the park, but there are days when there's people here when I'm a little sketchy. I tend to just stay on this side and then go back home.
Illegal drug use in public spaces like parks has been a problem on the rise.
Fentanyl is so inexpensive and so dangerous that people are literally dying in the streets.
Under the adopted ordinance, if police see someone using an illegal drug in a public place, they could be charged with a gross misdemeanor. That means a person could face up to 364 days of jail time and be fined up to $5,000. City council members are hopeful this way more people will get into treatment programs.
If they're looking at a year, it's a different question. And to get them into treatment as a condition of a shorter sentence is a goal.
I believe that we have to do something to change this kind of behavior and this attitude about public drug use. They can't afford it. If they are charged, they're not going to pay.
We pay more, work longer, and get less.
Hundreds of thousands of retired and active educators who invest in the state teachers retirement system of Ohio. And that organization has been using Silicon Valley Bank since 1999.
As the educators, are you able to decide where the money is invested?
No.
Many of the educators would rather have their money invested into passive accounts like index funds.
We have some people who haven't received a cost of living increase going on 9 years now.
Now, STRS claims that the money lost is only a fraction of the entire fund. They state STRS Ohio held shares of SVB worth $27.2 million, which accounted for approximately 0.03% of STRS Ohio's total fund.
The only people who get rich at STRS are Wall Street investors, our own investment employees.
We'd like to give you $25 to spend in this store today.
Oh my gosh, you guys melt my heart.
This month, the $25 vouchers were good for food at the grocery outlet in Anderson. Headed up by Farmers Insurance agent Wendy Douglas, 5 sponsors each contribute $200 to pay for 40 $25 vouchers, with reactions ranging from surprise to disbelief.
And we want to give you $25 to spend in the store today, just as a random act of kindness.
Well, that's a lot of kindness, isn't it? I like that. I'm going in for the food drive right now.
Spend it on. Perfect!
I can do double good here.
You can do double good.
All
Thank
right.
you. Bless you for that.
Once the shoppers get their groceries, they turn in their vouchers at the checkout stand.
It helps out a lot. I mean, when you're on a fixed income, you got to do what you got to do.
It means a lot because, you know, we're on 4 right now. Gas is so much, and my rent went up a lot.
Still to come here, our team of correspondents breaking down this week in Washington, from a potential TikTok ban to the political fallout of the Trump investigations.
And welcome back. Our Washington Bureau covers the nation's capital every day to report on the important issues facing the country and how they impact you. The Bureau's correspondents are here with their insights on the stories they've been covering. Chief Political Correspondent Scott Thuman, the focus of the political world right now, the case involving Donald Trump's hush money payments to Stormy Daniels. Legal questions aside, talk about the political fallout.
Well, Steve, there are plenty who argue an indictment doesn't benefit anyone. There are a few politicians over time who've been arrested and somehow come out with a more favorable view among the public. However, this is former President Trump. He's been a bit of an anomaly, as you know, when it comes to breaking political norms, despite the fact that he's twice been impeached, twice lost the popular vote. Right now, polling among Republican voters shows him 41% compared to Governor Ron DeSantis as his potential matchup at 27%. So he continues to push forward, and I spoke with famed defense attorney Alan Dershowitz this past week, who told me that if Trump is indeed arrested, he would find a way to pivot, to take that mugshot, for example, put it on posters, put it on T-shirts, use it in campaign ads, and rally his base further, and rally other Republicans who may not be 100% on board with Trump in saying they have to use it to fight back against what they consider to be not just the Democratic base, but the base that's always out to get them. He could make it a very personal issue and perhaps use it to his benefit. Obviously, a lot to play out here, but politically, some Trump supporters say this may only help them.
And turning to another blockbuster story this week in Washington, national correspondent Kayla Gaskins, the CEO of TikTok, being grilled on Capitol Hill. Tell us about that.
That's right, Steve. So that hearing happened earlier this morning, and it was pretty hostile environment for TikTok CEO. He was really getting heat from both sides, Republicans and Democrats, hammering him, pressing for answers on, well, they want to know a few things. First, how can TikTok be sure that China does not have access, the Chinese government, to American users' data? TikTok collects all this data from Americans, their location, their keystrokes, what they're searching. And the Chinese government has access to that because there's a law in China that says Chinese-owned companies must be able to provide data to the government as a matter of national security. Now, TikTok CEO did combat that and said that they are not a Chinese government company. They're a private company. But Representative Eshu says that she doesn't see a difference in China between the private companies and the government run. So lawmakers really not getting the answers that they wanted today, or the reassurances that they wanted that Americans' data and security are safe in TikTok. So we'll see how this plays out, Steve.
And national correspondent Christine Frizzau, TikTok just one of several national security threats regarding China. Tell us more.
Yeah, really interesting. I mean, let's just think about how this week started. It started with a major visit from Chinese President Xi Jinping to Moscow. He was welcomed with open arms, as much of the rest of the world has really tried to punish Vladimir Putin for his invasion of Ukraine. There was President Xi sort of, in effect, endorsing or at least standing alongside President Putin for this war. Now, that is just one reason. There are many more. Let's talk about them. Of course, China has long been accused of stealing our technology. China's also spending a lot of money on its military, preparing for what many believe is an imminent invasion of Taiwan. Let's connect the dots here. Taiwan is where 90% of the world's semiconductors are made. If that invasion happens, that could be dangerous. There's also China's getting more involved in the U.S. agriculture scene, buying up land, buying up farms, fertilizer factories because of that threat. You know, the governor of South Dakota, Kristi Noem, just signed a law saying nobody in South Dakota is allowed to do business or sign contracts with, you know, hostile countries. And that, of course, includes China. The concern here is that the more China encroaches, the more control they could get. And this seems to be something that they're aiming for. So just a lot of threats that lawmakers see, that people like Secretary of State Antony Blinken see. He's been testifying on the Hill this week. So we're going to keep an eye on this. Really a lot to talk about.
Christine Frizzau, Kayla Gaskins, Scott Thuman, thanks to the three of you for being on top of it all in the nation's capital. Back to you.
Thanks, team. Still ahead here, the deaths caused by delaying recalls. We're breaking down the story of one mom whose son was killed by a product that should have been taken off shelves. The IKEA mountain dresser was first recalled in 2016, but only after the deaths of 7 children who were killed when the dresser fell on top of them. This week, Spotlight on America's Angie Moreski investigates the danger of delaying product recalls.
So this is Ted's baby book.
Teddy was just 22 months old.
He was my little helper in the kitchen.
A bright and happy little boy, just 6 weeks shy of his 2nd birthday.
This was where it happened, right in that spot. Instead of planning his party, I was planning a funeral. Come give Chloe a hug.
In his bedroom, just like any other day, Mom put Ted down for a nap and came back to check on him a short time later.
I opened his door and I immediately saw that his whole dresser had fallen. And I thought, he's under there. He has to be under there.
4 hours later, Teddy was pronounced dead.
How infuriating was it to you to realize other children had died before Teddy?
It was heartbreaking. Within 4 days, I learned that his dresser had actually killed other children.
This is the model of IKEA Malm dresser that killed Teddy. IKEA knew of at least 2 other child deaths involving the dressers 2 years before him, but did not issue a recall.
It takes way too stinking long for recalls to be announced after people have reported injuries, even deaths.
This just-released study by the Public Interest Research Group highlights the danger. Last year alone, nearly 300 product recalls involving 650 injuries and 6 deaths, which happened over several months, even years prior to the recalls.
Lean into that sprint, Peloton!
Peloton is one of the most troubling examples in recent years. Disturbing videos of children being pulled under the treadmills went viral, but despite serious injuries, no recall was issued until a child died. The Consumer Product Safety Commission is the government agency tasked with protecting the public from dangerous products. But what many call a flawed law limits the agency when it comes to issuing recalls and warnings against specific manufacturers, even when they know the product is dangerous. Section 6B of the Consumer Product Safety Act says the CPSC cannot disclose derogatory information about a product unless it provides the manufacturer at least 15 days' notice to comment, which often leads to negotiation to avoid a potential suit by the manufacturer to block the disclosure.
It muzzles the CPSC to do their job effectively.
Finally, 4 months after Teddy's death, IKEA recalled 29 million Malm and other dressers. But it came too late for too many. At least 7 deaths now documented prior to the recall.
The bottom line is our recall system is broken, colossally broken.
The question now, is it time to fix it, especially when lives are at risk? In our next report, an exclusive interview with the head of the CPSC, we ask why the agency isn't more aggressive and find out what's being done to change that. For Spotlight on America, I'm Angie Moreski.
And this week, the iconic Yoshino cherry trees in the nation's capital hit peak bloom. Crowds flooded the tidal basin as D.C. started to enjoy some warmer spring weather. The trees were planted in 1912 after they were given as a gift from the people of Japan. Over 1.5 million people visit the city each year to see the blossoms. They're just gorgeous. I love this time of year. That's going to do it for us on the weekend edition of the National Desk, America's News Now. Don't forget, you can catch us live from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. and 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern Time. Just check your local listings. And you can also watch us online and catch up with the latest headlines on thenationaldesk.com. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you back here next week.